As property managers in the greater Palm Springs area, we look forward to festival season every spring when hundreds of thousands of people come to the city of Indio for Coachella Festival and Stagecoach.
With 3 festivals in 1 month, that's 2 for Coachella and 1 for Stagecoach, it's our most profitable month of the year.
And while it's busy and sometimes stressful, the profits that we're making that month and that our clients are making that month takes the sting out of the stress a little bit.
Cha-ching. Cha-ching. After those festivals in April, we head into the hot summer season and our rental demand declines a lot. Temperatures can be 115 or more degrees, and so for the next 5 or 6 months, our rental volume is down a lot, and therefore our rental income and commission income as property managers goes down a lot too.
So when we heard that there was going to be another festival held in early October in Indio, we were very excited to say the least.
Yeah, this could be a nice transition away from the slow summer season and a bit of a cushion, a nice profitable weekend to kick off the busier season for our owners.
And it was only 1 weekend of festivals versus the 3 weekends that we have in April. So how hard could it be, right?
Turns out we were wrong.
Very, very wrong.
I think it can't be that bad. Oh, it can't?
We did end up with 100% occupancy at the places, which is great, but we were dealing with a lot of stress, some sleepless nights, and we're still recovering from the aftermath at a couple of the properties.
And to top it all off, we weren't getting those festival prices like we're used to. Maybe that will change in the coming years as PowerTrip gains in popularity, but that wasn't the case this year.
Prices were better than your average weekend, but we still had to work pretty hard for the money. And as much as we like venting to you about bad Airbnb experiences, we also want this video to be helpful.
So with each of these stories that we're going to tell you about last weekend with PowerTrip, we're either going to include some sort of lesson that we learned or some sort of actionable tip that we've already implemented in our business that you can use in yours.
So when it happens to you someday, you'll be prepared. And notice that I said when, not if.
You are so right. You are so right.
The first big difference that we noticed between Coachella and Stagecoach and PowerTrip was the demographic was very different. It was an older crowd, and the biggest thing that we noticed was there were so many user errors when it came to using the keypad and just the whole check-in process in general.
Keypads were an issue, mostly just people not figuring out how to use it, but we wonder if there might have been some celebrating going on before they were trying to check into the house, or maybe it was just plain user error.
Brain's not firing at 100%.
Could be, yeah, that going on.
But it seems like there was a lot of just mashing buttons instead of trying to figure out how to use it or looking at the instructions.
Stupid technology.
Here are a few things for you to keep in mind for your short-term rental business when it comes to smart locks, keypads, and the check-in process.
The first thing is to make sure you're using the check-in instruction functionality in Airbnb and make those as thorough as possible.
Put photos for every single step and really just try and document how to do it all like you're talking to an 8-year-old.
Or an 80-year-old.
Doesn't mean they're always gonna read them, but at least you tried. This includes, how to use the garage door keypad, where the garage door keypad is, how to use a smart lock, how to unlock it and lock it again, all that stuff.
And in the back of your mind, be prepared to get on the phone with people. It's gonna happen, and just try and be as polite and patient and kind as possible.
And don't laugh at them.
How do I open this door?
The most common mistake that we saw at PowerTrip was people not understanding that when there's a button on the keypad that says 1 and 2 and there's another button for 3 and 4, that button can stand for multiple numbers and it's not 12, 34. So if the code was like 7134, they would either say there's not a button for the number 3 by itself, or they would just press the 3-4 button 1 time instead of pressing it 2 times for 3-4.
Makes sense to us how to use these locks, but we had a couple trouble instances last weekend. We had one particular call where Kylie was on the phone with the guest trying to get them to understand the lock. Meanwhile, I went into the smart interface, I unlocked it, and we just then told them to stand there with the door open and practice.
When a guest does report an issue with the keypad, the first thing that we do is check it in the app to make sure that there's not actually an issue with the lock itself and it's not just user error. And there was one instance last weekend where it actually was a lock issue. Which brings us to our third tip. Always make sure that you have an emergency key and a lockbox at the property, just for situations like this.
Yeah, we'll tell you more about this story in a minute, but this lock fail was at 2 a.m. and had we not had the emergency key there at the house, we'd be driving 30 minutes to let these people in.
We personally like the type of lock boxes that we can mount to an exterior wall or like a pony wall around a trash enclosure, but we'll leave a link to one that we like in the description box below.
Number 4, as a practice, we like to try and stay awake if we can until we know that a guest has checked into a house.
This is rarely an inconvenience for us because most people want to check in early. It is rare that someone is checking in very late, usually just because of travel schedules.
Then here comes PowerTrip, and groups of guests didn't check in until like 2 or 3 a.m. after night 1 of the festival.
And one of those groups in particular was staying up at Base Camp 74, which is like a 40-minute drive already from the festival, up a switchback mountain road and then down like a mile dirt road that doesn't have any lights. That was a little stressful.
Are you sure we're going the right way?
Yeah, we didn't make it till 3 a.m. that night. We tried our best, but
Didn't try at all.
you didn't try. I tried. I think I stayed up till like 1:30. But we did make sure to turn up the volume high on our phones. We could take a call or hear if someone was trying to get a hold of us.
After the guests have checked in on the first night, we aren't as concerned because usually at that point we've worked through any confusion about the keypad or the guests know how to get into the house at that point. But we still do keep our phones on high, and it's a good thing that we did because on night 2 of PowerTrip is when we got that call at 2 o'clock in the morning that the guest was locked out.
We do keep our ringer volume turned up, mostly because we don't want to miss a call from the city hotlines in case there was a noise violation, but we also don't want to miss a guest call in case there's some emergency.
My phone was on vibrate.
This particular guest had sent a message in Airbnb and we didn't hear that notification from Airbnb.
The call that we actually got was from the gate, from the call box. This property is in a gated community, and the first time the guests arrive, they have to call us from the call box and then we buzz them in. So thankfully she did think to go back and do that, but she also did have our phone number.
Would have been easier if they would have just called us, but we took that gate call, highly assumed that they just forgot the transponder or something, and she buzzed them in
And hung up. So what happened is they ended up driving back a second time, and the second time that they called from the gate, I was a little more awake, buzzed them in, and then thought, this seems a little weird. So I checked Airbnb, and that's when we found out that they were locked out.
They had also called Airbnb support, who got a hold of us, who are both awake now at this point. It's kind of funny, the story they told Airbnb support, that they went out to do a little work, came back in, couldn't unlock the lock.
Okay, the door won't open. The door won't open.
We ended up getting a hold of the guest ourselves. They told us that they had locked the door, the entry door from the garage. They couldn't go in that way. So we directed them towards the emergency lockbox with the physical key inside.
For that, we checked our remote access to the lock. It did report that the battery was low, not dead, but these locks, sometimes when they start to report the batteries are low, it's kind of can be the end and they get finicky and work intermittently. We kind of knew what was up, and that's why we directed them to the emergency lockbox.
Because it was working intermittently, it wasn't letting us open the lock remotely either. We figured everything's good, they're gonna get the key from the lockbox and get inside, but then we get another message from the guest a few minutes later that they can't get the key to work to open the door.
It's strange because it is the only key in the lockbox and it came with the lock and we've tested it, but probably getting frustrated with the whole situation at this point. But then somehow they said they finally got in because they entered the code again and the lock did unlock. So we don't know how exactly it happened, but they made their way in the house.
We take full responsibility for this one. This one was on us. We should have made sure that it wasn't getting this close to dying.
Batteries are a weak point, especially in the heat, and they can decline quickly, which is just a kind of an aside why we like to hardwire cameras and not do battery powered cameras, because the battery life isn't great. Which our driveway camera came in handy for the next guest who decided to completely ignore the checkout time.
During PowerTrip, everybody wanted an early check-in and everybody wanted a late checkout. And tip number 5 is it's okay to charge for early check-ins and late checkouts.
We make, reasonable accommodations where we can. If a guest, wants to come at 2 p.m. and the house is ready instead of our normal 3 p.m. check-in, we'll allow that. It's possible for us, and then it sort of makes the stay start out on a positive note, lets the guests get there when they arrive and get into the house.
Same goes for late checkouts. If we know that we don't have anyone coming in that day and our cleaning team is okay with it, we have some advance notice, then we're fine letting the guests stay an extra hour or so.
But if it gets to be like noon or later, then that's going to require us blocking that night from booking, which we do get last minute bookings, and therefore we need to get some compensation for that.
Most of the properties that we manage are 3 bedrooms. They take about 3 to 4 hours for the cleaning teams to fully turn them over and complete a good amount of the laundry. So if someone's checking out at 11 or 12, then that's not going to give them enough time to turn it over before the next check-in time. And we do actually get a lot of last minute booking requests, and many of them are same day bookings.
Back to the story, when this guest decided he was going to completely disregard the checkout time, we decided to charge him.
Our cleaners reached out to me around 10:20. They said that they had been at the house for a few minutes and they ended up knocking on the door. And one of the guests came to the door and said that I said that they could stay until 2 p.m. And when you hear something like that, you kind of start to second guess yourself, like when someone's so sure of what they're saying. So we looked back at all of our message history, didn't have anything in Airbnb, just a few back and forths when they booked. No sort of text message or anything like that. Like, definitely did not say that they could stay till 2. And if we would have said, yes, you can stay till 2, we would have charged them for it.
Checkout time for all guests is at precisely noon.
Yeah, so they straight up lied to our cleaners, which is pretty lame. And then they proceeded to not respond to any of our messages. We messaged them through the platform and then we text their phone, no response. By this time it's 11. And so the last thing we said to them was that we're gonna charge $75 per hour, the unplanned late checkout.
We also opened up a case with Airbnb support about the whole issue, and they tried to reach out to the guest as well with no luck, but they did agree that it was a good idea to send a late checkout fee request through the Resolution Center.
So here's the thing, we're not fee hungry people, we don't nickel and dime our clients, and we don't nickel and dime guests, but when there's a situation where you blatantly ignore the checkout time, don't communicate with us, lie to our cleaners, we're not gonna do you any favors.
And we did see on the cameras that they didn't end up leaving until about 2:30 that afternoon.
And this is just kind of a reminder why we have the smart home technology, because we could see on our driveway camera, we could also verify with the smart lock and the MyQ garage door opener that there hadn't been any movement at the house.
You can check out all of these items that Steven just mentioned. They're all on our smart home checklist. You can access this list for free using the link in the description box below, or you can go to arrivals.com/work smarter, not harder.
We just updated this list to include our new favorite item from MyQ, which is their smart keypad and video camera.
Features on this smart garage door keypad are something that we've been looking for years. And the main one is the ability to set and change multiple different codes for the garage remotely using their app. So we can set a code for ourselves, for the cleaning team, inspectors, and the guests.
Previously, to change a garage code, you'd have to be physically on site, kind of a cumbersome process. So game changer, especially if you're managing remotely. And then they also have an added sort of bonus feature. There is a camera built onto the keypad. It's nice to have. It's not the best camera and the most accurate with motion notifications, but it's there. And then you also have the standard MyQ functionality, being able to open the door, close the door remotely if you need to, get alerts if it's left open, that sort of thing, which we do like.
The next bad experience that we had during PowerTrip was our very first guests at Base Camp 74. And if you don't know what Base Camp 74 is, Steven and I purchased this property a year and a half ago. We've been working so hard to get it online, and last weekend we hosted our very first set of guests there, and they were there to go to PowerTrip.
Yeah, we were really so excited to have kind of crossed the bridge, getting the house guest ready, having the guests there, but it turned out to be a pretty stressful experience.
They went straight to the festival and didn't check into the house for the first time until 3 a.m. And we didn't hear from them for the first time until around 10:30 the next morning, when they reached out to tell us that the house was uncomfortably warm and that none of them could sleep.
Unbearable was this lady's word, and that we had to do something about it.
You wake up sweating in the middle of the night.
We do what we do. We had just installed mini splits at this house, had remote connectivity, we checked. They were set at 76, which is what we left it at. Hadn't been adjusted at all since we had left the house the day before. We asked them and they confirmed that cold air was coming from the mini split vents. They said that wasn't good enough and that they needed fans brought to the house.
He's getting heated already. So we politely suggested that they turn down the temperature on the mini splits to whatever temperature would make them comfortable. We told them where the remotes were located and mounted on the wall. Have at it, you know? But changing the temperature on the mini split was not the answer that they had in mind, and they decided to call Airbnb support instead.
They really wanted fans. Kylie fielded that call from Airbnb support, explained the situation, told them that we could see the history. In about 10 minutes prior, they actually did turn down the set points, but no AC system in the world is going to respond in 10 minutes. to change in temperature. We just told the Airbnb support people that they needed to give it a reasonable amount of time.
I told them we are in no way opposed to bringing fans. If the guest really wants fans, we'll bring them some fans, but we're just asking them to give it a little bit of time. And they agreed. They were even laughing about it a little bit on the phone. So over the next hour or so, we watched the temperature slowly decline to the set point. And then we got another message from the guests that it just wasn't good enough. They were worried that when they got home in the middle of the night again from PowerTrip, that it was going to be warm again for some reason.
It's so hot in here, Marty.
So we had some fans in our garage, and I just was tired of the nagging behavior, so I drove them up there and chalked it up to the joys of being in the hospitality business.
That was not the end of it with these guests. There were a lot more things that transpired over the course of the next few days, and even today we're still getting messages 5 days after checkout. But anyways, we have another video planned going over our first month with that property on Airbnb, our earnings, and how things have been going so far. So I will save the rest of the stories for that video.
Make sure you're subscribed to our channel, turn on those notifications, make sure not to miss that one.
Give us a like just for having the worst first guest at the property. The lesson in this whole experience, I really found myself getting into this headspace of self-doubt that, one, did we spend all of this time on this property just for it to be like a bust and get a bad first review and then have to dig our way out of that hole? And two, like, is it really as great as we think it is? Like, there's a lot that comes, you know, when someone just comes in and has nothing positive to say. And I've mentioned this before in one of our videos, that it's not the guest's job to make you feel better and, like, you know, stroke your ego and tell you how wonderful your house is, but it does hurt, guys. I get it.
But you just have to tell yourself and remember that you've put a ton of effort into a property for a reason, to make it a great place. Most guests are gonna love it, and that's just how it's gonna be. But sometimes there's an asshole who's just always gonna be and you can't please them.
We hosted a couple there this week and they loved it. We had another group checking in today. They just sent us a message saying this place is wonderful. So we just have to leave that PowerTrip guests in the past and focus on what's ahead.
We're convinced this is really going to be a great property.
I kind of like this venting session. It's like therapeutic in a way.
It is. This week has gone much better, except we are still chasing down that late checkout fee that we mentioned. We involved Airbnb support and tried to get them to coerce the guest into paying.
And now it's time for date night. The kids are with my parents and we are going to go have a quiet dinner and not think about PowerTrip for another year.
We'll link a video here on the screen that we think you'll like to watch next.
Thanks for watching and we'll see you in the next video.